Chapter 2. Now come days of begging, days of theft, days of riding where there rode no soul save he. He's left behind the pinewood country, and the evening sun declines before him beyond an endless swale of dark falls. Here like a thunderclap and a cold wind sets the weeds to gnashing. The night sky lies so sprent with stars, and there is scarcely space of black at all, and they fall all night in bitter arcs, and it is so that their numbers are no less. He keeps from off the King's Road for fear of citizenry. The little prairie wolves cry all night, and dawn finds him in a grassy draw, where he'd gone to hide from the wind. The hobbled mule stands over him and watches the east for light. The sun that rises is the color of steel. His mountain shadow falls for miles before him. He wears on his head a hat. He's made from leaves, and they have dried and cracked in the sun, and he looks like a raggedy man wandered from some garden where he'd used to frighten birds. Come evening, he tracks a spire of smoke rising oblique from among the low hills, and before dark he hails up at the doorway of an old anchorite nested away in the sod like a ground sloth, solitary, half-mad, his eyes red-rimmed as if locked in their cages with hot wires, but a ponderable body for that. He watched wordless while the kid eased down stiffly from the mule. A rough wind was blowing, and his rags flapping about him. "Seen you smoke," said the kid. "Thought you might spare a man a sup of water." The old hermit scratched in his filthy hair and looked at the ground. He turned and entered the hut, and the kid followed. Inside, darkness and a smell of earth. A small fire burned on the dirt floor, and the only furnishings were a pile of hides in one corner. The old man shuffled through the gloom, his head bent to clear the low ceiling of woven limbs and mud. He pointed down to where a bucket stood in the dirt. The kid bent and took up the gourd floating there and dipped and drank. The water was salty, sulphurous, but he drank on. "You reckon I could water my old mule out there?" The old man began to beat his palm with one fist and dart his eyes about. "Be proud to fetch in some fresh. Just tell me where it's at." "What ye aim to water him with?" The kid looked at the bucket, and he looked around in the dim hut. "I ain't drinking after no mule," said the hermit. "Have you not got no old bucket nor nothing?" "No," cried the hermit. "No, I ain't." He was clapping the heels of his clenched fists together at his chest, too. The kid rose and looked toward the door. "I'll find something," he said. "Where's the well at?" "Up the hill, follow the path." "It's nigh too dark to see out here." It's a deep path. Follow your feet. Follow ye mule. I can't go. He stepped out into the wind and looked about for the mule, but the mule wasn't there. Far to the south, lightning flared soundlessly. He went up the path among the thrashing weeds and found the mule standing at the well. A hole in the sand with rocks piled about it. A piece of dry hide for a cover and a stone to weigh it down. There was a rawhide bucket with a rawhide bail and a rope of greasy leather. The bucket had a rock tied to the bail to help it tip and fill, and he lowered it until the rope in his hands went slack while the mule watched over his shoulder. He drew up 3 bucketfuls and held them so the mule would not spill them, and then he put the cover back over the well and led the mule back down the path to the hut. "I thank ye for the water," he called. "I thank ye for the water." The hermit appeared darkly in the door. "Just stay with me," he said. "That's all right. Best stay. It's fixing to storm." "You reckon?" "I reckon, and I reckon right." "Well, bring your bed. Bring your possibles." He uncinched and threw down the saddle and hobbled the mule foreleg to rear and took his bedroll in. There was no light save the fires, and the old man was squatting by tailor-wise. Anywheres, he said. Where's your saddle at? The kid gestured with his chin. Don't leave it out yonder, something'll eat it. This is a hungry country. He went out and ran into the mule in the dark. It had been standing, looking in at the fire. Get away, fool, he said. He took up the saddle and went back in. Now pull that door before we blow away, said the old man. The door was a mass of planks on leather hinges. He dragged it across the dirt and fastened it by its leather latch. I take ye lost your way, said the hermit. No, I went right to it. He waved quickly with his hand, the old man. No, he said. I mean, ye was lost to have come here. Was they a sandstorm? Did ye drift off the road in the night? Did thieves beset ye? The kid pondered this. Yes, he said. We got off the road some ways or another. Knowed you did. How long you been out here? Out where? The kid was sitting on his blanket roll across the fire from the old man. Here, he said, in this place. The old man didn't answer. He turned his head suddenly aside and seized his nose between his thumb and his forefinger and blew twin strings of snot onto the floor and wiped his fingers on the seams of his jeans. I come from Mississippi. I was a slaver. Don't care to tell it. Made good money. I never did get caught. Just got sick of it. Sick of blank. Wait till I show you something. He turned and rummaged among the hides and handed through the flames a small dark thing. The kid turned it in his hand. Some man's heart, dried and blackened. He passed it back, and the old man cradled it in his palm, as if he'd weigh it. They is 4 things that can destroy the earth, he said. Women, whiskey, money, and something else. They sat in silence. The wind moaned in the section of the stovepipe that was run through the roof above them to quit the place of smoke. After a while, the old man put the heart away. The thing cost me $200, he said. You give $200 for it? I did, for that was the price they put on the black son of a bitch it hung inside of. He stirred about in the corner and came up with a dark brass kettle, lifted the cover and poked inside with one finger. The remains of one of the lank prairie hares interred in cold grease and furred with a light blue mold. He clamped the lid back on the kettle and set it in the flames. Ain't much, but we'll go shares, he said. I thank ye. Lost you away in the dark, said the old man. He stirred the fires, standing slender tusks of bone up out of the ashes. The kid didn't answer. The old man swung his head back and forth. The way of the transgressor is hard. God made this world, but he didn't make it to suit everybody, did he? I don't believe he much had me in mind. Hey, said the old man, but where does a man come by his notions? What worlds he seen that he liked better? I can think of better places and better ways. Can you make it be? No, it's a mystery. A man's at odds to know his mind, 'cause his mind is aught he has to know it with. His mind is aught he has to know it with. He can know his heart, but he don't want to. Rightly so. Best not to look in there. It ain't the heart of a creature that is bound in the way that God has set for it. You can find meanness in the least of creatures, but when God made man, the devil was at his elbow. A creature that can do anything, make a machine, and a machine to make the machine. An evil that can run itself 1,000 years. No need to tend it. You believe that? I don't know. Believe that. When the old man's mess was warmed, he doled it out, and they ate in silence. Thunder was moving north, and before long it was booming overhead and starting bits of rust and a thin trickle down the stovepipe. They hunkered over their plates and wiped the grease up with their fingers and drank from the gourd. The kid went out and scored his cup and plate in the sand, and he scoured them too, and came back banging the tins together as if to fend away some dry gulch phantom out there in the dark. Distant thunderheads reared, quivering against the electric sky, and were sucked away in the blackness again. The old man sat with one ear cocked to the howling waste without. The kid shut the door. "Don't have no bacca with ye, do ye?" "No, I ain't," said the kid. "Didn't allow ye, did. You reckon it'll rain?" "It's got every opportunity. Likely it won't." The kid watched the fire. Already he was nodding. Finally he raised up, shook his head. The hermit watched him over the dying flames. "Just go on and fix your bed," he said. He did, spreading his blankets on the packed mud and pulling off his stinking boots. The flue pipe moaned, and he heard the mule stamp and snuffle outside, and in his sleep he struggled and muttered like a dreaming dog. He woke sometime in the night with the hut in almost total darkness, and the hermit bent over him, and all but in his bed. "What do you want?" he said. But the hermit crawled away. In the morning when he woke, the hut was empty, and he got his things and left. All that day he watched the north, a thin line of dust. It seemed not to move at all, and it was late evening before he could see that it was headed his way. To be continued.